Team Solo mid to kick off the season with a victory. First thing I want to touch on immediately is the early game, because it actually looked like Cloud9 had a really commanding control and lead there in the early game that seemed to unravel throughout the rest.
Yeah, it seems like they made a very good choice. So we talked a little bit in the pregame about TSM adapting slowly to the times. There was a change in the middle of last season where the experience range of dying minions was vastly increased, and Balls took advantage of that. They started the lane swap, pretty good freeze for both sides. Balls immediately TPs bot lane, and he just starts absorbing experience. And he's matching levels with the AD carries, doing perfectly fine. He tries boomerang, doesn't really matter, but he's gaining levels. And Dyrus is running around double jungling with Santorin, and I don't think that's how you're supposed to play lane swaps anymore. It's pretty easy to be safe while gaining XP in lanes overall, and that was a massive lead. With the level lead, he built a CS lead over Dyrus. He actually killed the turret later on in the one-on-one because he's up 2 levels the whole time. I just felt like, as a team, Cloud9 is more aware of the lane swap situations.
Yeah, and the thing that really surprised me about that is when Gnar is in the lane throwing boomerangs out, the boomerang will usually hit more than one minion, which will cause the wave to push away from you and towards the AD carry and support, and they didn't zone him. They had no real way to zone him unless they were both going to walk up and just go after him. But then on the opposite side, Cloud9 had played it so well by pulling minions into the brush over and over again that they had the wave pushing towards them the entire time. So Dyrus, even if he had showed up, it would have been a long lane that he would have had to try to absorb experience through, and he would have been vulnerable to ganks, he would have been vulnerable to flank arounds and zones. Right. And it's just a really bad situation for TSM, but Cloud9 created that through these tiny little mechanical things.
Yeah, definitely better freeze. I think also part of it is the fact that it's Gnar versus Aurelia and Thresh on one side. So Lemon could just sit in the forwardmost brush and be I dare you to try to get CS.
A lot more damage output than Janet.
Hook into Elise, right? It's a free kill at that point. Gnar can boomerang and say, get out of my brush. So there are, of course, some external factors as well, but I still think something that TSM could have played better.
So we have Cloud9 commanding the early game. A small gold advantage throughout, the first few minutes. And even Bjergsen seemed to struggle with CS. He was losing to Fizz in the early game, which I wouldn't expect to happen normally.
So I had the same thought as you. I was oh, he's losing lane to high. Wow, this is really atypical of him. But his interview, he said, look, all I wanted to do was play passive in the early game, make sure I'm not getting ganked. And if you're going to give up CS to make sure you don't die, because at least cocoons from Fog of War are pretty brutal and you can't guarantee ward coverage, then I get it. You sacrifice 5 CS, but you keep levels, you never get zoned out, never get a bad recall timing. And then he's like, oh, I got blue buff, then I aggressed. And you saw it worked out. So I think this is the beginning of us sort of realizing, look, these guys are potentially actually sacrificing CS on purpose.
Right.
And then just playing it really safe because they know the matchup flips later on.
Exactly. There was a great example of that 15 minutes in, as you said. Bjergsen aggressed onto Fizz, forced him to get out of the mid lane, and then because of the vision and the rotations that they made, they were able to push down not 1, but 2 turrets in the mid lane, which completely opened the map up for TSM.
Yeah, and I think high on the Fizz, I was not convinced at all. I felt like his playful tricksters, he threw a couple out just to zone with a fish. The time that he actually got chunked under the turret, he had Urchin Strike to the left, and then he E'd to the right with playful trickster, and then the charm came out. Bjergsen held on to that ability and read high like a book. He's like, you're going to E afterwards because you think I'm going to throw a charm, and he threw it the opposite direction and caught him. And that's what allowed them to do it. And I felt like he just couldn't get into fights after that. They shut down the Fizz, and it's a relatively low damage composition if you shut down the Fizz. It's all this 500 range Sivir after that because you have Elise and Gnar both building tanky.
So I want to go into a replay kind of early into the game. This is one of the more competitive of the 2 fights because we started to watch them snowball into TSM's direction. We're going about 16 minutes into the game to the bot lane. Phreak, I'm going to let you take this one away.
Yeah, so this starts out really good by TSM. They actually massively out-rotate Cloud9, and they identify the fact that Fizz is wave clearing in the bottom. You look at the minimap, you can see Fizz fighting minions over there. And so these guys know for sure that TSM are going to outnumber these guys. Bjergsen's already coming over. So roll the clip, very smart dive to pick up elimination, just a simple dive by Santorin. Under the turret, no big deal. This is all very smart. Now the thing is, they do take some damage here because there is a turret coming in. So they get a 1 for nothing, and they back out. The TP from Balls comes in, making it a 4v4 because Fizz is coming down. Dyrus, though, shows up late, and this is a chase. Lust Boy pops Zulti here, but is still catchable because Balls plays really well. They get the Shark onto him, so now suddenly TSM are outnumbered, and they should still be leaving, or at least have been fighting together in the very first place. I think if Dyrus had flanked initially, he would have made stuff happen, but he TP'd in to kill the turret while his team was getting chased down, gave up a lot of pressure there. Then he got killed himself, which gave up a turret and a dragon, and this was sort of showing to me TSM's early sort of shot calling not on the same page. Dyrus kind of like, he either could have recalled and finished Triforce and showed up to a fight, or been part of the fight in the first place, or they could have committed, like, gone right back down into the turret, something like this. But they completely split up and let C9 back in when they got a pick.
Yeah, and when I see a fight like that and I see the teleport come in late, I imagine what had happened if it had come in early, at the same time as Balls even. He would have been able to just push up forward, and instead of retreating down the side, they would have just pushed up the lane more, because it would have been a 5-on-3 at that point. They had picked Lemonation, and Hai was actually coming down from the top of where you come by Wolves. And it was going to take him a couple extra seconds, and they had enough damage at that point with Sheen and with these other things, the Phage, to actually pick another member off before Hai even got there.
Even something as simple as positioning the teleport correctly for a safe retreat. Yes. Because he TP'd into a split position. He was now, you know, bot side of the bottom turret while the team was running.
He got the turret, though.
Yeah,
he got the turret.
But while the team was running up through the jungle, right? And then he paid for it with his life. After that, they chased him down to the bot lane. From there, though, I have to say, TSM started commanding the fights, while C9, we have to give them credit for controlling the global objectives in terms of dragons and barons. We saw them pick up 3 dragons and a baron before TSM picked up any.
Yeah, TSM was really going for all of the turrets and the team fights and kind of neglecting the dragon timer. They were like, it's okay, you can have all these, that's fine. We're not going to even get to the 5 dragon point. They ended up trading inhibitor for baron, which they ended up pushing with super minions later on and using that as kind of leverage. And I thought it was a fantastic plan.
There's an interesting balance between the gold earned from global objectives like turrets versus the stat bonuses, or what you attribute as gold value from stat bonuses from things like the dragon. Because what we witnessed was TSM that actually started down a little bit due to CS, ended up skyrocketing in the gold advantage up 4 or 5K in the mid game, while Cloud9 is sitting there putting weight into, well, if we get dragon buffs, that move speed is worth X amount of gold. What do you guys feel is kind of the balance between the two, and when is it okay?
I don't know. To me, like, the more I've played the new season, I have a really hard time weighing the value of a dragon. I feel like it never feels like it does anything. And I know it does. Like, to me, dragon is more like, hey, if you let me get 5, we're going to probably win the game. And it's like, I play the game, but, like, the 6% AD never seems to, like, matter in the team fights. The positioning is almost so much more important. Hitting an item breakpoint, like, by the way, items are worth more than their weight in gold. They're always over 100% gold efficient, any completed item. So gold is worth more than the gold value of the dragon. Flat out, always literally the case.
Is that true with Youmuu's?
If you activate it, sure.
Yes, if you activate it, yes.
I mean, come on, like,
I gotcha.
There's no item where, like, you combine it, you're like, damn, I wish you didn't buy the combine for this thing. It's impossible. So I feel like Dragon is more like a ticking time bomb thing where, look, if we can't close the game out, we're going to keep taking these, and at 36 minutes we will. Great, right? That's fine. But I don't think, like, they have 3 dragons, don't fight them is not, like, the case.
Yeah, right, so I think that begs then the question of, like, when we're looking at team comps and team play styles, things like that, are teams that are more oriented towards brawling, sieging, and, really like, hey, let's fight, whether it's under a turret, this or that, are they at a greater advantage now? Because we're starting to realize that maybe, the dragon, you don't need to put so much weight on it early when it's a % AD bonus at 12 minutes into the game.
Certainly, Dragon Rushes, I think, mean less than they used to, right? The 3-minute Dragon, where you got to get your BF sword a wave earlier and then bully out the bot lane, that used to be a big deal. The 6% AD, I mean, yeah, okay, it's 9 attack damage in my lane matchup. That's kind of nice, but, like, right? Like, it doesn't really actually matter. It's like, oh, no, I've got a long sword on him, and no one ever cares you got a long sword on somebody. So that's the general gist of it to me. I do think, though, you can have these early game-focused comps, but you've got to weigh taking dragons as well as turrets. Right. You've got to get a map advantage. You've got to get the actual gold coming in to push yourselves ahead, because dragon's not worth XP, it's not worth items. You don't team fight better by taking dragons, which allows comebacks so easily.
Let's look at our second replay. I want to move back, kind of reorient ourselves back into this game, and look at something that TSM did very well, which was brawl. Later in the game, we found them pick the right fights, really exhaust the ultimates resources and ultimates of Cloud9 before engaging for team fights. So we're going to pull up the final fight of the game right around the Baron. Zirene, I'm going to let you walk us through this one.
All right, so this is where we end up seeing Sneaky and Lemon using Sneaky's ultimate and Righteous Glory to try and find a fight, but they don't find anything. And this composition lacks engage aside from running into them, landing a cocoon, which you'll see Meteos try to flash for and miss it, and Gnar getting in, but they kind of need something to assist him. So TSM just back off, let it wear out, and then they re-engage and kite around, and they never, like, look at them right now before the fight even starts. They're pincer maneuvering this so they don't get Gnar ultied on multiple people. Let's roll the clip out, and you'll see this come out here. They end up using the Righteous Glory there and the Sivir ultimate, and Sneaky's in the back line, and he is their main damage source. Balls is tanky, Meteos is tanky, Hai is shut down. Sneaky's damage output in this fight is so minimal because of the low range of Sivir. They end up getting some damage later on, but look at this. Turtle is completely untouched there. And how much damage has Sneaky done in this fight? And Cloud9 in general is just extremely low. And it's really, really just about the composition and finding the engage, and they couldn't find it in time.
Exactly. The big problem, I think, was kind of both the Fizz and the Elise together. They had no damage output. Gnar didn't build a Hex Drinker nor a Brutalizer, or even like a Sunfire Cape to deal more damage. Elise went full tank, Ninja Tabby after building the Juggernaut enchant. There's no damage output here in the composition, which you need. Sivir is one of the worst late-game carries for damage output, and the entire weight is on Sneaky's shoulders. You can't really bear that as a Sivir when there are threats in your face. You run like an Olaf in the jungle to have a damage threat, or you run like a Jarvan to make sure the engages actually land. And he's actually a decent damage dealer in his own right. The comp works a little bit better. And we talked at the beginning about keeping coaches accountable. Honestly, I didn't like this comp from C9.
Yeah, and the fact that TSM played it perfectly with shutting down high. Great on Bjergsen for getting the solo kill, which is something that you shouldn't actually count on. It's like, I'm going to solo kill him in lane, and that's our strat. No, it kind of just fell into his lap, and they're like, oh, we can exploit this. And they kept going in over and over again and really getting high kind of off of his just kind of groove and throwing him out of the entire team fight. He was the last person like alive there, and he really couldn't do anything at all.
We do have to give a lot of credit to Bjergsen, for the solo plays, although, as you said, they can't necessarily be planned for. The fact that he stepped up, did make some of those MVP, type plays in terms of getting solo kills, and then expanding that lead to over 3K at some point individually in that lane matchup. I want to look at how much we think jitters and things like that might have played into this, because when you look at that last fight, I was starting to count.
Yeah.
Thresh missed a hook.
Yeah.
You have High using Playful Trickster, too often defensively as opposed to offensively. He missed fishes throughout the game. I mean, this is uncharacteristic of them, I would say, who we normally tout Cloud9 as being one of the top team fighting teams in the league, and here they are struggling to find the engages they want, and then when they do get an engage, they're not capitalizing on it.
Yeah, I really think that High's fishes were really off too. His Playful Tricksters and his fish were just not landing. And we never saw him make a play where he like QEs in, Zonias, and then he's E's back up and he's able to get out or make a play along those lines. We never saw a play like that from him this entire game, because he really couldn't pull it off being shut down.
Yeah, honestly, C9 still had their big sort of team benefit thing that they're so good at with. They had good rotations. The Baron Sneak was great. They managed to stay up in a game where they were losing, I would say, the most important lane in the game. They were out-comped severely in team fights and managed to keep it competitive for so darn long, but they still had the individual misfires, a lot of skill shot misses as you're talking about, and again, a bad champ select, I think.
Okay, well, so let's dissect the champion select some more then. Let's look at alternative things that they could have done here. Yeah, well, in terms of the way it played out, right? We had the Rumble, Cassidy, and Lissandra bans from TSM. We had the Trist, LeBlanc, and Italy bans from Cloud9, right? Then we see the first pick, Rek'Sai, immediately followed by Gnar Sivir.
Yeah.
I mean, Gnar Sivir to me seems like a very solid first rotation of picks. You've got, Sivir, fantastic AD carry right now in the meta, has a lot of mobility, gives you both that engage and disengage that you might want depending on how a fight is turning out, right? So that seems fair to me.
Great.
Then we see Jinx Janna picked up. Where do you go from there? How do you pivot it?
So the one thing to keep in mind is Janna is such a queen of disengage.
Yes.
Like, not only does she, of course, push people back, but what an unsung hero here is the local move speed to dodge skill shots like Cocoon and the fish and stuff, where it's like, actually, you dodge the skill shot engages too by picking Janna. And it gets really unsung. I think no one's really brought this up before, but it's true. It helps just a little bit. You still can power through this, though, right? You get like a black shield so that you can't be Janna away. You pick up Morgana's Bart, which, by the way, Lemon is great at. You go for a Jarvan or a Vi or a champion that is immune to knockbacks when they go for somebody, right? If you need to kill one person, which Jinx is that kind of champion, Vi Fizz, there's no way you peel that.
Right.
You're knocked up for a second and a half, a shark comes at your feet, Jinx is gonna die at that point.
She's gonna die.
I became Southern, that's how much she was going, that's how down under she was going to be. I made it work, I made it work.
You got it.
But I really think that the Narvin should have been the combo that they went for there. I think that the Jarvan was the pick that they should have gone for. Like, they didn't have any real damage with the Elise. Elise Cocoons are really unreliable, but when Jarvan gets up in your face, it's a point and click R, and then the Gnar ultimate on top of that. That's why that combo is just so widely regarded right now, because it's collision terrain for Gnar ultimate. Jat was talking about how the TSM is playing these fights so well because they aren't standing next to walls, so balls can use his Gnar into them. If you just throw the Jarvan R down, boom, circle of walls. You have walls galore, 360 degrees of walls. What more could you ask for? Even if people are outside of the Jarvan ultimate, you can still gnar them into it from outside. It's great.
Right. Yeah, I would have to say the jungle Elise pick was probably the most questionable, especially because, again, you look at Jarvan as being that foolproof engage, as opposed to, as you mentioned, due to the Janna, they have the movement speed to be dodging cocoons, to be dodging thresh hooks and fish and things like that.
Yeah. The other big one was Fizz, and I understand the Fizz pick. I can't completely fault C9 for this one because it's a lane matchup. Bjergsen said, I haven't played it much, but it's normally a good matchup for Fizz. Like, this is an understood, like, hey, he picked Ahri, blind pick. You get to kind of pick that lane, and that's not a bad thing to do, but it relies on you winning your lane then, because it's not going to work as well for a team fight. Fizz, without someone to help him get in, without some way to make that skill shot guaranteed to land, you're just going to be kind of a dead champion, right? Getting something like a Syndra or a Xerath, or just something that has reliable damage dealt. When the Boomerang wasn't enough poke, the Sivir Q wasn't enough poke, these guys take one charm, lose half their health, you have no way of firing back, no way of exerting any pressure to then have a follow-up engage on.
Yeah, their engage was kind of like an 800 speed skill shot that's pretty dodgeable.
Right.
So.
Yeah. You have to wonder how we'll see champion select and team comps evolve as the beginning of the season kind of begins to unfold. But now that you've gotten a glimpse of the pros in action, take your league passion a step further by creating a fantasy league of your own. Build a team of your own favorite LCS players, rack up points for first bloods, pentakills, and smash turrets, and take down your friends. Head to fantasy.lolesports.com and start drafting today. For those of you that picked up the Burger King, you are going to be feeling pretty happy with that performance, I have to say. Now, we do have to take a quick break, but Team Coast and Dignitas are taking to the stage for our next match, so don't go anywhere.
Time to get into the action with Team Solo Mid versus Cloud9. Flash engage coming in from Santorin. Bjergsen picks up high. Santorin's going to go down. Is it worth? And that is just going to be Meteos trying to find a way out of this fight. Another one. That's going to be a kill down onto Meteos going over to Dyrus. Meteos goes into the repel. Bjergsen trying to get in with Spirit Rush, but he's just on the outside. Orbit Ascension to hit. He does not. He does pick one up, actually. He picks up balls, and the fight continues.
They just can't get him.
They're still trying to go in for the fight. There's the box. It goes down. Dyrus is right in the middle of this one. Lustboy as well. And it is a completely melted Cloud9 team.